The village of Willow Creek was a place of peace by day. Sunlight bathed the quaint houses and cobblestone streets in a warm glow. Birds sang sweetly in the surrounding woods, but when night fell, a blanket of fear settled over Willow Creek. The forest, so inviting during the day, transformed into a menacing labyrinth of shadows. No one dared to enter the woods after dark, not anymore. For legend spoke of a sinister presence that lurked among the trees. The villagers called it the Watcher, and they whispered tales of its victims, souls lost to the darkness. Generations had passed down the legend of the Watcher. It was a tale whispered by the firelight, a chilling story meant to keep children from straying too far. It was said to be a creature of the night, its eyes glowing like embers in the darkness. Those who claimed to have seen the Watcher spoke of an overwhelming sense of dread, a feeling of being watched, hunted. The villagers believed that the Watcher preyed on those foolish enough to tempt fate. Anyone who dared enter the woods after dark was never seen again. Their disappearances only served to strengthen the legend, weaving fear deeper into the fabric of Willow Creek.
This is just a ghost story, a silly tale meant to scare children.
Samuel, a young man new to Willow Creek, scoffed at the villagers' superstitions. He dismissed the legend of the Watcher as nothing more than a ghost story. Determined to disprove the myth, he decided to venture into the woods himself. As the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the village, Samuel prepared for his daring adventure. He gathered a sturdy flashlight, a compass, and a thick rope, dismissing the villagers' warnings with a confident smirk. He would be the one to finally expose the Watcher for the myth it truly was. The air grew colder as Samuel stepped across the threshold of the forest. The chills seemed to seep into his bones, making him shiver involuntarily. He paused for a moment, glancing back at the village he had left behind, its warm lights now distant and faint. The last rays of sunlight struggled to penetrate the dense canopy, casting eerie shadows that danced around him. The interplay of light and shadow created an almost hypnotic effect, making the forest seem alive, as if it were watching his every move. The once familiar woods now seemed alien, menacing. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig sent his heart racing. The trees, which had always seemed so welcoming during the day, now loomed over him like silent sentinels, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. A shiver ran down Samuel's spine, but he pressed on, his skepticism battling against a growing unease. He'd always dismissed the tales of the haunted woods as mere folklore, stories told to scare children. But now, in the heart of the forest, those tales seemed all too real. The deeper he ventured, the denser the woods became. The trees grew closer together, their branches intertwining to form a nearly impenetrable barrier. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. The path, barely visible in the fading light, was swallowed by a tangle of roots and undergrowth. Each step was a struggle as he had to navigate the uneven ground and avoid tripping over the gnarled roots that seemed to reach out to ensnare him. Samuel stumbled, cursing under his breath, his confidence waning with every step he took away from the safety of the village. The forest seemed to close in around him, the darkness becoming almost palpable. He could feel the weight of the night pressing down on him, making it hard to breathe.
This is nothing. Just some trees and shadows. He tried to reassure himself, but his voice sounded hollow, even to his own ears. The forest seemed to mock his bravado, its silence broken only by the occasional distant hoot of an owl or the rustle of unseen creatures.
But deep down, Samuel couldn't shake the feeling that he was not alone. The sensation of being watched grew stronger with each passing moment. He quickened his pace, hoping to find a clearing or some sign of civilization, but the forest seemed endless, its shadows stretching out before him like a never-ending maze. The forest was eerily silent, save for the sound of Samuel's own breath and the pounding of his heart in his chest. The darkness seemed to press in on him, suffocating.
As I walked, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig sent a jolt of fear through my body.
Then he heard it, a whisper, faint at first, carried on the wind. He stopped, straining his ears, his blood turning to ice. It was a voice, low and guttural, seemingly coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. The voice sent shivers down his spine, whispering his name, mocking him. Panic surged through Samuel. He quickened his pace, stumbling over roots and rocks. The whispers grew louder, swirling around him, taunting him. He could feel the presence of the Watcher closing in.
My flashlight flickered, threatening to plunge me into complete darkness.
Suddenly, his foot caught on a root, sending him sprawling to the ground. His flashlight clattered away, plunging him into an abyss of darkness. Blindly, he scrambled for it, his fingers closing around cold, damp earth. Above him, he felt a presence, a coldness that seemed to drain the warmth from his body. Terror gripped Samuel. He had never felt such an intense, paralyzing fear before. The forest around him seemed to close in, the trees whispering secrets of ancient horrors. He looked up, his heart pounding in his chest like a drum. Each beat echoed in his ears, drowning out the sounds of the night. Two glowing embers pierced the darkness hovering above him. They were not just eyes, they were windows to a malevolent soul, the eyes of the Watcher. A legend whispered among the villagers, a tale of an ancient being that roamed these woods. He tried to scream, but no sound escaped his lips. It was as if the very air had been stolen from his lungs. The eyes burned into him, filled with a chilling ancient malice. They seemed to see through his very soul, judging him, condemning him. Then, as quickly as it had appeared, the presence vanished. The forest returned to its eerie silence as if nothing had happened. Samuel lay there, paralyzed with fear, for what felt like an eternity. His mind raced, trying to comprehend what he had just witnessed. Slowly, he sat up, his body trembling. Every muscle ached, as if he had been frozen in place for hours. He fumbled for his flashlight, his fingers shaking uncontrollably. He clicked it on, the beam of light cutting through the darkness. The light flickered back to life, revealing nothing but the empty woods. The trees stood silent, their branches swaying gently in the night breeze. But Samuel knew deep in his heart that he had just looked into the eyes of something truly evil, an evil that lurked in the shadows, waiting for its next victim. He stood up slowly, his legs unsteady. He had to get out of there, but the memory of those eyes would haunt him forever. As he walked cautiously through the forest, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig sent chills down his spine. Finally, he emerged from the forest into a clearing. The moonlight bathed him in a soft glow, but the fear lingered. He knew he had escaped, but the terror of the Watcher would never leave him. The first rays of dawn painted the sky with hues of pink and orange, but the cheery colour brought no comfort to the villagers of Willow Creek. Samuel had not returned. Fear gripped the village like a vice. The whispers of the Watcher, once dismissed as mere legend, now echoed with terrifying reality. A search party was quickly assembled. Grim-faced men and women, armed with lanterns and ropes, set out into the woods. Their hope dwindled with every passing hour. The forest, once their playground, had become a silent, menacing enemy. The Watcher had claimed another victim. The villagers searched for days, their desperation growing with each passing hour. Each step they took was filled with hope and dread, their flashlights piercing through the dense foliage, casting eerie shadows that danced around them. They scoured every inch of the forest, calling out Samuel's name until their voices were hoarse. The echoes of their shouts seemed to mock them, bouncing back from the trees as if the forest itself was playing a cruel game. But the woods remained silent, save for the rustling of leaves and the chirping of birds, their cheerful songs now a haunting counterpoint to the grim task at hand. The once familiar sounds of nature now felt alien, as if the forest had transformed into a different world, one that was indifferent to their suffering. As the sun began to set on the third day, casting long shadows across the forest floor, the villagers knew they had to face a grim reality. Samuel was gone. The light of day, which had once been a beacon of hope, now only served to highlight their despair. The Watcher had taken him. This mysterious figure, a legend whispered among the villagers, had now become a terrifying reality. The forest, once a place of life and sustenance, had turned into a realm of fear and loss. The search party returned to the village. Their heads hung low, their hearts heavy with grief and a chilling fear that settled over them like a shroud. The silence that followed them was deafening, a stark contrast to the frantic calls and rustling leaves of the forest. They knew that life in the village would never be the same again, the shadow of the Watcher looming over them, a constant reminder of their loss. The legend of the Watcher had once been a story whispered by the firelight, a cautionary tale. Now it was a terrifying reality that cast a long shadow over the village of Willow Creek. The villagers lived in fear, their movements restricted by the invisible bars of their own terror. The woods, once a source of peace and solace, were now a forbidden zone, a constant reminder of the darkness that lurked at their edge. And so, the Watcher remained, its legend growing with each passing season. A chilling reminder that some mysteries are best left undisturbed. For in the heart of the haunted woods, evil watched, waited and claimed those foolish enough to ignore its silent, deadly warning.